Andrew Mason, and we are here to talk about the Denver Broncos with you. Now it's Friday, so we're going to get a little, well, we get a little crazy on Friday. Let's just be honest, Mace. It's the end of the week. Broncos news is a little bit slower today, but first, we just have to recognize then and realize and note to our listening and viewing audience, like if we get a little slappy today, it's fine. It's been a long week. Behind the scenes, we're learning new software as we launch this show. Friday is laid back because usually I'll be in studio now. And today, of course, in the comfy confines of my home studio, as you can see all the comic books and football stuff that surrounds me. I think one of my most proud collections, Mace, it's
Mm-hmm.
I have a collection of sporting news draft guides dating back to the 80s. I can look, it's right here, so I can find what the first year is from like 85 till now of their
Mm-hmm.
draft guides. I also have Phil Steele's. I have the like last 20 years of Phil Steele's right here. They're great resources when you're writing and you're talking about draft prospects, just to look up, especially Phil Steele, like where were they at coming out of high school, those sorts of things. I think this is what makes us, I don't know, kindred spirits. Because we idolize
Yeah.
Phil Steele and the old what was it? How many football magazines did there used to be? You know what I mean?
Oh, I still write the Broncos section for the Lindy's football annual that comes
Yeah.
out, and so
Lindy's is awesome.
yes, thank you, appreciate that. Thanks for being a customer. Um, so we've got, but yeah, when I was in high school, I used to buy. Let's see. There's Phil Steele's, Street and Smith's. Street and Smith's is kind of the old school Mac Daddy of it all.
Right.
Sporting News, Lindy's, Athlon's. I remember Don Heinrichs back in the day. I mean, yeah, and I used to love that moment. Usually about early to mid June, when I'd go to the grocery store and see the magazine racks, and they're all filled with the college and pro football previews for the coming year. Because at your point, you're like, yes, yes,
Yes. Yeah.
we're getting closer.
You
The
could
the
almost tell the
season's
calendar by
uh
what's on
huh.
the newsstand, right?
Yes, and actually, I'm old school because to this day, um, when OTAs end and we've got about 5-6 weeks, and usually there'll be a couple weeks of pure vacation in that time, and you're kind of downshifting a bit. That's still my summer reading, is to go get some previews. Generally speaking, not NFL, because you and I have a pretty good kind of read on the NFL, but
Right.
I will buy like a couple of college football ones, and that'll basically be my some of my summer reading until we get to training camp, because I'm trying to kind of catch up, and inevitably guys in college end up going to the NFL, so that's sort of how I start kind of the gradual learning process. But yeah, I'm kind of old school. I still love a magazine in my hand.
Mm-hmm.
Not so much newspaper anymore. I don't subscribe to an actual fish wrap old school print newspaper anymore.
Uh-huh.
But I still love magazines. Still love actual hard copies of books. Yeah,
Many
I'm old
leather-bound
school.
books in Andrew Mason's library, and I got to tell you, I do the
And
same thing in
you know what it
July.
smells
Phil,
of?
what was that?
Rich mahogany.
Rich mahogany. Yeah, in July, like when everyone's celebrating 4th of July, which is fantastic, I'm on the back deck reading Phil Steele. Like
Yeah.
that's kind of my summer vacation kickoff. By the way, look what I found. So they had 4 issues of this. That's it.
Wow.
4 issues. You remember this? And I
What is that,
can't
like
remember exactly the
NFL
year.
magazine?
Yeah,
NFL.
the NFL magazine. There was 4 issues. I have them all here. I have 2 issues of this. And then I remember, I was super excited about
Wow.
subscribing to it. It came in the mail and it was on the like King Super's newsstands and stuff. And so then I like the 4th issue, they just had like a thing that came with it that was like, "Hey, sorry, we're not going to do this anymore." After only 4 issues, the NFL succeeds at a lot of things, but their magazine was not. It must not have done well.
You know what? That wasn't their first attempt at a magazine, too, because I recall back in the very early 2000s, late 1990s. I think it was early 2000s that they had something called NFL Insider, which I believe also for a short time they used as branding for some game programs
Yes.
that were
Yep.
sold as well. And way old school. They had, of course, the game day magazines, the game programs that you would buy at the stadium. But for a while, the game day magazines were a subset of a regularly occurring publication called Pro with an exclamation point. And in fact, if you look at like game day magazines from like the early to mid 1980s, it says something like a Pro publication. Like it's the NFL made a bunch of attempts at magazines. I doubt they will again. Like that NFL magazine that you were holding up, that was the Tebow era. So that would have been, if they're calling him the NFL's hottest player, that would have been probably like late 2011, maybe like winter of 2012 when they were coming off of the 8-8 season, the division title, and winning in the playoffs against Pittsburgh.
Yeah, December 2011 is when this
Okay.
was dated. So yeah.
So that went to press during the middle of the Broncos winning streak that year, when Tebow was who everybody was talking about. I still joke about how, in terms of freelance money that I made, Tim Tebow made me a nice chunk of change
Oh yeah, I
at
was on
that time.
Sports Center because of Tim Tebow. Like, and I love that era. I know a lot of fans like, oh, he couldn't play, and oh, I hated him. Yeah. It was fun. It was fun. It was crazy. It didn't make any sense. The defense was really the key. That and Matt Prater. Thank God for Matt Prater. But
Yes.
somehow, some way, Timmy would come through, and it was just this wild ride. It didn't make sense. It was confusing. It was like at the end of Magnolia when it starts raining frogs, and you're just like, I don't know. It was entertaining to this point. Like that's what it was. So I like you, man. I love the Tebow time. Like it was fine. I had a sticker on my laptop, and the dearly departed John Clayton, God rest his soul, because I love him. He's set by him and Adam Teicher at the combine. Well, John would give me a lot of grief about my Tebow time sticker, but yeah, man, I loved it. It was fun.
It was absolutely bonkers, and
Yeah.
the thing is, I remember also just not only the good games, but I remember also the moment where I knew this thing is really on borrowed time. And it was that Christmas Eve in Buffalo. Broncos were 8-6. They were a win away from the division title. Buffalo's fans are tuned out. The stadium is about half empty, maybe even more than that. I remember driving to the game from my hotel in the Buffalo area, going past a mall. I believe it's the Cheektowaga Mall. I'm sure DMAC, if he were here, could tell us because he knows the geography of Buffalo really well. And seeing that every parking spot was packed and thinking, oh, yeah, there aren't going to be many people at the game because everyone's going to be doing something else today. And they were. And then Buffalo just had a perfect game plan. And what we had seen, that was the third week in a row where Tebow had been contained. And so by then it's like, okay, if a team like Buffalo, not a very good team, with Ryan Fitzpatrick, they'd actually just strangely extended him on his contract. If a team like Buffalo can contain him, just as the Bears did 2 weeks earlier, although Matt Prater saved their bacon, as did the late Marion Barber when he stepped out of bounds.
Right.
And then the Belichick had done it. And now this Buffalo team going nowhere, Shane Gailey and Dave Wanstead, really just absolutely destroyed Tebow. It was 40-14, a lot of turnovers, a lot of mistakes. I remember at that point knowing, okay, this is about to end. This is going to end badly. Not knowing that 2 weeks later we'd be seeing a miraculous playoff win against your Pittsburgh Steelers, Cecil. And honestly, and that was another thing. After they've lost the 3 games leading up to the playoff game, and they back in because the Raiders blow it at home against the Chargers at the same time as the Broncos lose a very forgettable 7-3 game to the Chiefs. that Pittsburgh game, I thought, man, if the Broncos just keep it close, if they lose by 10, they will have won.
Right.
Remember, that was the game where the game plan going in involved Brady Quinn coming in on third downs
Yes.
to try to basically because he could pass the ball better than Tebow. But the Broncos take a lead early and they never end up going to that. Tebow ends up staying in and has the game we all remember, 10 of 15 for 316 yards and the touchdown to Demarius Thomas in overtime, and that was it. But just man, what a bonkers ride that was.
Yeah.
We'll forget what happened the next week in New England when it was Saturday night prime time, blistering cold, and Broncos just got frozen out. It wasn't close. It was
And Tebow got beat
awful.
up something fierce by the Patriots, but that
Yeah.
also was the next day because that was a Saturday. So we had Sunday, and then Monday night at media night is when I asked Russell Wilson if he wanted to back up Tim Tebow. And that's when he
Yep.
got pissed at me and he stood up out of his chair and he puffed up at me and I was like, "Wow, I've never had a player do that to me and to my face." But yeah, you ask people. I was so ornery because Tebow was such a lightning rod. I would ask people about Tebow just to be like, so I could go back on the radio. I was on ESPN Denver at the time and just be like, "Hey, I talked to so and so and they loved Tim Tebow." So
Oh yeah. Anything that was said about Tebow was a story. I mean,
yeah.
Yeah, I asked Russell Wilson something similar after practice a day or two later, and I got a very similar response. Um, my thought was okay. I didn't think they were similar quarterbacks. I thought Russ was a much better passer, but hey, like you could step in and keep a lot of the same things in the offense if inevitably you turned over to Russell Wilson, which I think if they drafted Russell Wilson they would have, but it didn't come to that. They signed Peyton Manning, but they still almost drafted Russell Wilson.
Right. They like three
But
quarterbacks that year: Brock, Russell, and Nick Foles.
the problem was Russell Wilson was 5'11",
Yep.
and the other two quarterbacks were tall, and so they picked the tall quarterback. And boy, think how Broncos history might be different if they had picked Russell Wilson. Let's start with.
You could have Russell groom him behind Peyton Manning. Oh, it'd be beautiful, man.
Let's start with Super Bowl 48. Seattle doesn't make it to the Super Bowl, right, without Russell Wilson. As good as that defense is, they're probably not there in the Super Bowl with Matt Flynn at quarterback. So instead of playing Seattle, maybe you play San Francisco. And then I think San Francisco would have beaten the Broncos in the Super Bowl too, because they had a lot of talent on the defensive side as well. And I think they would have exposed the Broncos a little bit. And then instead of having that win be over Seattle, it would have been over, or that loss be to Seattle, it would have been to San Francisco. And then would have complained about that because you know what, John Fox wouldn't have practiced for the noise regardless. Didn't matter, which I don't get. As we're just this is kind of a rambling show.
It's kind of a member-berry show, memory lane Fridays, and if it's slow, hell yeah, baby! Like we love football. We got a bazillion stories we could tell.
Well, we've got on the side of the screen there moments that made you cry. A lot of people are going to say that Super Bowl 48's a moment that made them cry, or just retch in disgust at watching it. But John Fox had coached in the Super Bowl with Carolina. They were playing the Patriots, Super Bowl 38. And it was in what was then known as Reliant Stadium, now NRG Stadium. Pretty noisy because you closed the roof. Why John Fox emerged from that game, 32-29, won by the Patriots, last second field goal by Vinatieri. Might not have happened if John Casey hadn't had the kickoff go out of bounds. Why you emerged from that game, how you emerged from that game, saying we don't need to practice noise, I have no clue. And I think more highly of John Fox than many people in Broncos country. I think he did a lot of really good things.
Oh, yeah.
But I still, to this day, cannot get past not practicing with noise in the run-up to Super Bowl 48. I don't know what he was thinking.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've heard Orlando tell the tales like they step on the field and they just know, like, we're in trouble.
Yeah.
We're in trouble.
when I knew, I mean, I didn't really know for certain on the first snap that went past Peyton Manning's head from Manny Ramirez for a safety, but it's a long game, right? Like, okay, other things can happen. When I knew was watching Seattle's speed on defense completely diffuse the Broncos, everything that they were trying to set up. You couldn't get the bubble screen game going because Seattle was so fast at all three levels of the defense. And so I knew in the first quarter that this is probably going to be a long day because they just looked like they were shot out of a cannon, and the Broncos looked slow. And then so it went. It was, oh boy, that's a bad day, a bad memory. I remember being on the bus because I was doing some work with the team then, and I was on the team bus going back to the hotel, and oh my, I mean, just dead silence. Not a word was said on the team buses. And then they somehow, by the way, it's not just the winning team that gets a Super Bowl party; they do a party for the losing team as well. And it was like, why would you have a party when you lost the Super Bowl 43-8?
Right.
I went down from my hotel room, said hi to a couple of people, got a bit of food, and then I just went back to my room and packed. Like I didn't want to be around. I just didn't want to be around. Basically I went down to that losing party just to say that I'd gone, right? Like just to see what it was like.
Right. The experience.
Yeah, and it was something, and none of it was good. A lot better a couple of years later when they won it, of course. That, and oh boy, that made Super Bowl 48 worthwhile. But I do feel badly for guys like Orlando who were around for Super Bowl 48, but then didn't get to cash in 2 years later. There's a bunch of guys like that too. Champ Bailey, Orlando Franklin, Dominique Rogers-Cromartie, Eric Decker, Wes Welker. Although Welker Welker never got a ring in New England, did he?
I don't believe
don't
so.
think so. Welker kind of,
because it was Edelman that got all those rings.
Yeah, Wes Welker kind of got there in time for 16-0 when they lost the Super Bowl. And then he left and came to Denver. He lost another Super Bowl as well. He lost 2 Super Bowls to the Giants. Then he comes to Denver, loses the Super Bowl as the phone goes off.
Hello, Mason residents.
Yeah, let's. yeah. Wes Welker was a part of 2 Super Bowl defeats. I have no clue who that is. 2 Super Bowl defeats with New England, a part of 1 Super Bowl defeat with the Broncos, and has lost the Super Bowl as an assistant coach because he was with the 49ers when they lost the Chiefs. How about that?
When Jimmy Garoppolo can't hit Emmanuel Sanders.
Yeah.
Wow. Dude, and I say this in all seriousness, Mason, you know that my respect level for you is incredibly high. You need to write a book. Like there needs to be, because I have Mike Kliss's books behind me. I have the Broncos memories and all that, but like your stories from the sidelines, you need to write another Broncos book.
Okay.
Like write like all these memories, all these stories, like they need a home, man. Broncos fans would love that.
Yes.
Charlotte would love it as well.
Yes. Charlotte would love that. Yeah, but I need a book that's not like just like journalism stories, but just like that, stories of like the post game party that was dead after one Super Bowl, and then after another Super Bowl was lively, and Flo Rida was playing, and Aqib Talib was getting up on stage and singing along and all that, and it was magnificent. So
magnificent. Well, shout out to Charlotte.
What's up? Shout out. What's up?
Nothing.
Okay.
She just likes being on camera, right? It's all good. It is all good. And now Mace's microphone was knocked out, so you'll hear me go on and on for a little bit. And no, I'm fine. Your mic's out. Now your sound's back.
I have no clue what happened.
Now
Nothing.
we're going through your mic. See that earlier we were going through your external mic. That now we're on your mic. I can tell through my
Okay,
headphones.
so we were just on the external mic then before.
Yep.
I don't know what's going on anymore. Because
Yeah.
here's the thing: I can hear you, and it's going through this little device here. So, oh my gosh, what the heck? I may need to get a new dongle or something.
New dongles and technical difficulties. It's Friday, baby.
It's raining outside here in Wisconsin. By the way, we finally got all the snow to melt around here.
Okay.
So it's actually rather nice. Oh, I thought someone was coming in. I guess not.
Not yet. But the moments that made you cry, I got that from our dear friend Kay Adams. Her show Up and Adams asked on Twitter, like, what's a sports moment that made you cry? I said this one's for John. Like, and I know people would be like, you're not a Broncos fan. Okay, fine. You got me. One, I don't think you should be a fan doing this job because you have to be an analyst. And there's nothing worse than people with credentials that are fans. Tell me how great you are, Russell. Why are you so great? Like, don't get me on that soapbox. But for me, it was just knowing the struggles of my family. My biggest Broncos fans, like my sister Carrie, who watches sometimes. My grandmother Mildred, God rest her soul. She loved John Elway. Like loved John Elway. And because we grew up in the country, I've told this story before, Mace. You don't get a day off in the country, okay? Cows got to be fed, all those sorts of things. So you work all the time, except on Sundays, my entire family, grandparents, cousins, everyone that lived on the farm, we would stop work. We would go watch the Broncos together. So, like, I don't have memories of family vacations or Disneyland or whatever. One, we were poor. Two, we're in the country. But I do remember how important that was to stop what you're doing, go watch the Broncos together. And so when it's this one's for John and Mr. Boland's up there and I'm bawling because I'm thinking of my grandma who's going crazy. I'm thinking of my sister who's going nuts, like all my Broncos family. I just know what it meant after the Super Bowl struggles of the 80s and 90s.
Yeah. The one I think of as far as like a moment that made me cry, it wasn't positive. I think of as a Bucks fan, I think of the Bert Emanuel game. I don't know.
Oh God, yeah, the trap where they said he didn't catch it
resulted in a change of the rule.
Yes.
So that it would be a catch. He's diving for it. The ball is secure.
Interesting. Your mic just went out again. Oh boy. Your mic just went out again, Mace. I don't know. It's crazy. It's the craziness of this is what happens on a Friday. But share with us your moments, no problem. Share with us your moments of what made you cry as a sports fan. And it doesn't have to be in a bad way. It can be in a good way there as well. So just let us know and we will talk about it or continue to talk about it and kind of get things going there as far as Mace figuring out his stuff. And again, this is kind of just what you do, everybody. This is what you deal with sometimes. So there you go. Top 30 visits for the Denver Broncos is something that's also on the rundown. And tight end help. Both of our previews are out there at denversports.com. I write about the entire class and I sneak in some of my favorites. And then Mace writes about the sleepers in the class and the Broncos fits. So we're hitting the draft from both angles. I'll provide insight on the entire class overall. I'll grade the class overall. Mace will handle the sleepers in the class and also the Broncos fits. So we've got you covered. Denversports.com. As far as tight end help that is out there, I want you to read and check out Andrew Mason's latest at denversports.com. Also, sign up for that Denver Sports Daily, which gets you the top sports stories from Denver Sports right to your inbox every day, hot and fresh. It's the Denver Sports Daily. No paywall, nothing like that, nothing silly. Just sign up for free and help us out. Help us grow the YouTube channel as well. Like, comment, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell so that you never miss a vid, and all those sorts of things. I believe we may have Andrew Mason back. Mace.
Let's try again.
Okay,
Let's try
let's do it
again.
again.
Let's
Let's
try
do it
again.
again. Yeah, we're here. I got you. You got me?
Yeah, I got you. Like, it was so weird. Like, the sound just went off. Like, again, like I couldn't hear you. I don't know if you could hear me. And
No, I couldn't hear you. Yeah, it was weird. It just kind of clicks and then weird. So whatever, we'll figure it
yeah,
out, baby.
I think this dong. Well, I guess we'll have to go get a new dongle and see. This is the let's see here.
That's the suspect.
Yeah, otherwise we'll have to get a whole new thing, and I hope it's just the dongle. Otherwise, it's going to cost me a lot more money. We'll find out. We'll find out. Yeah, but if it's the dongle, as I drop it, that is if it is deficient, that is the deficient dongle.
Okay, the deficient dongle.
You like the alliteration there, by the way.
I know, I do. You love that alliteration. I love it too. I love Jack Coletto, who got a top 30 visit from the Broncos. As we'll wrap up today's show with a couple of top 30 visits. And when Jack Coletto came through, I was just grinning from ear to ear. I was like, yes, of course.
We were talking about him at Senior Bowl or Shrine Bowl.
Shrine Bowl, yeah.
You were all over him, and you were trying to mask what you felt might be an Oregon State bias.
Yes, because my daughter goes to Oregon State.
Right, and because you've watched Jack Coletto.
And I love Luke Musgrave as well.
Yes.
But Coletto, he's everything, man. He's the Swiss Army knife. Well, he does it all. And so maybe he's a Taysom Hill type prospect. And something, again, we were writing about tight ends. It's available, both of our articles on denversports.com. Like, yeah, there's a lot of different options out there for Denver.
Yeah, I mean, he's not Taysom Hill in that he's not going to go all of a sudden play quarterback. It's Jack Coletto. But, yeah, can he be an H-back? Can he be a fullback? Can he be a tight end? Sure. Now, I will say this. I felt like they had a decent one of those guys in Andrew Beck, and they let him walk to Houston. But, again, as you and I have talked about over the last few weeks, we see Sean Payton looking just for something different. Not necessarily better, but different, just to, I think, change the attitude, a transfusion of attitude into the team to break free of the last few years of defeats. And I think what happens in something like this is you do end up seeing some good, productive players that move on, that just kind of get caught up in that. And I think Andrew Beck is one of them. I think Andrew Beck,
I like Eric Saubert too.
Yeah, I thought Saubert and Beck, I think those are guys that could have helped you in terms of building the back end of your roster, being versatile, being dependable, doing whatever's asked. But I feel like this is Sean Payton saying, I want some different players in here who aren't tied to the failures of the last few years. You can't get rid of everybody. The contracts, the way they're structured, mean you just can't clear cut the entire roster. But I feel like some of the moves we've seen already, for example, Zach Allen over Draymond Jones, tell me that it's not necessarily that you're getting better, but you want somebody else just because you want someone who hasn't been weighed down by the defeats of recent years.
Yeah, it's interesting, the top 30 visits that they're having. I also did write up, my latest at denversports.com is about West Florida wide receiver David Durden, not Tyler Durden, but David Durden, who has got a nice side speed combination. And, you know, I had written about how when he was at Mercer, he just showed up, started scoring touchdowns. Like, that's what he does. Last 2 years, 23 touchdowns, top of my head. Like, you've got speed. His route running needs work, refinement, whatever. I mean, it's West Florida, so yeah, his game needs refinement. But it's like, and I don't want to be that guy, Mace, and I know I drive people crazy, but like, he's got skill as a receiver and a returner, whereas Montrell Washington, to me, was just a returner. And you tried at receiver, it didn't work. It didn't even work at returner.
Yeah, and you try him at receiver, and they actually invested some decent time and reps in him because he's out there getting first-team reps. So with Montrell Washington, I feel like he did get a fair shot. He just didn't have the goods, at least at wide receiver. Right now, if you're making the 53 player roster, I don't think there's a place for him. I think a guy like Brandon Johnson has a much better shot of finding a way to stick
Yes,
than
Jalen Virgil.
than Montreal Washington. Even though you look at some of the guys they brought in and their role on special teams, and okay, you know, they like Lil Jordan Humphrey, they like Marquez Callaway. Both of them have been with the Saints. All of a sudden, the odds start looking pretty long for Brandon Johnson, Jalen Virgil, even though you like their talent, unless you are able to trade somebody at the top of the depth chart and move everybody up a line. And that's part of why I think you're not going to see these rumors on Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy all of a sudden going away just because you have a public pronouncement from Sean Payton that they're not interested in trading either of them. I think the interest is at the right price. They just haven't gotten the right price. But you sit back, you be patient, you let the draft board fall, you get a gauge on what other teams' needs are and what they might do, and who knows? Maybe you're talking about a deal that would allow some of those younger guys a better shot to make the roster. Right now, it looks pretty. The climb looks pretty steep for Brandon Johnson and Jalen Virgil, two guys who I know we both like and would like to see more of, just because of the numbers game and because those Saints players are not being brought in to not make the team. If they've got a connection to Sean Payton, he's bringing him in because he sees something in him. There's a big reason why he's brought him in.
I hate to put you on the spot, but I know that you're capable of handling these sorts of responsibilities. Where is West Florida?
It's in Pensacola. I believe they're the Argonauts.
Yes, they are the Argonauts because I was giggling. I was like, oh, the Argonauts. Okay. I got some friends that work up in Canada. So,
yeah, if I'm not mistaken, they actually play their football games at the minor league baseball stadium there in downtown because I don't believe they have an on-campus facility. I could be wrong, but but they were, at least last time I thought about West Florida, they were playing over at the minor league.
So next time I fly into Pensacola for the Senior Bowl, because that's the pro tip. Don't fly into Mobile, baby. Yeah. Fly into Pensacola, drive an hour west. Mm-hmm. So I can pick up some Argonauts gear, is what you're telling me.
Well, I think you're going to have to go to the campus. I'm not sure they have West Florida Argonauts gear at Pensacola Airport.
Maybe one of those gas stations, right? Get a $5 hat.
You're probably more likely to find like Escambia High School gear than West Florida gear at a gas station. By the way, can you tell me what Hall of Fame player went to Escambia High School?
Ooh, no, I can't.
Emmitt Smith. And the reason why I know that is because as a sophomore in 1984, in the state championship game, ran all over my alma mater, St. Petersburg High School, the Green Devils. The only time we made the state championship game, and we lost something like 47-14.
You made it, and you faced Emmitt Smith.
Yeah, great. I mean, think about that. I think St. Pete had maybe like a couple of guys who got scholarships, and I think maybe one was what was then 1A, and I think one was 1AA, maybe a couple of D2 guys, and Escambia's got a future Hall of Famer just as a sophomore. That's the thing. Think about it. In basketball, Michael Jordan didn't even make his high school team, Laney High School, Wilmington, North Carolina, as a sophomore. But Emmitt Smith, as a sophomore running back at Escambia, was leading his team to a state championship at the expense of my high school. So, but yeah, that's your Pensacola trivia for the day. It's cool. It's actually cool to see a West Florida player being talked about, because I don't think that program is very old, Cecil. I think they did.
They started in 2016.
Yeah.
And then they won the national title. 2 years later, something like that. So. Yes. Yeah, and Durden was part of that. So you have a player that's got speed to take the top off the defense, and he's really fast, and he's super tough. Like, the dude takes a beating. Usually speed guys, you're like, oh, that's all they can do, right? Is they just want to run fast, and they want to drag, and hopefully they have late hands. Hopefully they can track the ball well over their shoulder. That's what you're looking for with speed guys. You don't often find, especially small school guys, who are speed guys, but also can get off the line quickly and don't care about their body, like over the middle type stuff. Durden is capable of all sorts of these things. So I applaud that top 30 visit for the Broncos.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And the other thing also, and this is where you say, okay, this is George Payton's influence still in there. We know George Payton loves his small school guys. Like, he would love to be able to find the next Adam Thielen, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you got to, if you're gonna do that, you got to turn over some rocks, baby, to find those types of players. Good for the Broncos for having their search include Durden, and we'll see. Maybe he'll be on the radar. My guess is we're talking about priority undrafted for him, but you know what? That used to be an 8th round pick back in the day, right? I mean, it's
And
not
I
the
would say
quality
that
isn't
for
there.
Coletto as well. I
Yeah.
think with Jack Coletto, we're talking about, 7th priority, somewhere in there.
And here's something to think about when you see the Broncos visits. If you have more guys that you're bringing in for those 30 visits plus your Zoom calls, if you have them focused on players who are potentially not going to be drafted, what you're doing right now is you're starting that process of selling yourself to them, because it's the exact opposite of the draft. When you get to the undrafted realm, is that you've got to sell yourself. It's like recruiting, right?
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, the player's going to decide where they want to go.
Yep.
And we've seen time and again players that the Broncos have liked and wanted to bring in. They've gone somewhere else because they thought the situation was better somewhere else. So when you have Coletto, when you have Durden, and you're having those conversations, you're not just getting to know that player and see whether you want him around, if you want to be a part of the Broncos. You're also saying, all right, if you come in, this is going to be your role. You're effectively, some of these visits are about getting a 1 month jump start on the free for all that happens toward the back end of the draft and immediately after the draft, because those pickups happen lickety split.
Mm-hmm.
You're basically getting a jump start in selling yourself to that player and saying what your plan for him is going to be. So I actually think when you use these visits and these conversations on players like that, I think it's sometimes better than saying, let's go talk to a guy that we might pick in round 4, someone
Right.
who you might have already talked to at the Shrine or the Senior Bowl or the Combine
Combine.
anyway. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's why Pacheco was a top 30 visit last year.
Yeah.
You sneak him undrafted, and so it's so cool, Mace, that
Yeah.
you bring this up, and only you and I could do this on this show. Humble brag, is because it's not just hey player, sell yourself to us. No,
Mm-hmm.
they're actually selling themselves to the player
Yes.
to
Mm-hmm.
be like, hey, in 30 days, when you're a priority free agent and your agent's phone is ringing off the hook, remember us. Remember how
Right.
much you love Denver.
And there's nothing to say the Broncos can't sit there in that meeting and say, look, if you go undrafted, we're going to give you a huge signing bonus. And that's another thing that comes into play as well. When you're not going to have a huge draft class, right? I think you're going to have a huge undrafted class. You're going to treat this like an extra round. And I think you're going to see the Broncos throw out some pretty notable signing bonuses to guys that they bring in. Because remember, here's the other kind of little secret of the secret sauce of the whole process that is involved with bringing in guys. Um, in the off season, under the salary cap, only the top 51 contracts count, right? So what's to stop? So if you believe in a player that they're going to be around in some form or fashion on your practice squad or maybe in your 53, what's to stop you from saying, you know what, these other teams are offering you $10,000 bonuses, we're going to offer you a $75,000 bonus, and doing
Mm-hmm.
this over and over to get the best talent. Well, because guys are generally going to follow that guaranteed money. And of course, the Broncos, their budgets pretty well unlimited in terms of guaranteed money. Another example of what the Walton Penner largesse can help in terms of getting the football operations going around here.
And we'll be all over it after the draft, Mace, but I wouldn't be surprised this year because of the circumstances if they have more than one UDFA that makes the 53.
Oh, I bet on 3.
Okay.
I think I think we'll see 3 undrafted free agents on the 53 when all is said and done. They're gonna be counting on these guys.
Okay. And with that, and what'd you call it? The tainted dongle? What? What?
The defective
dongle. Okay, I knew there was some alliteration there.
The presumed defective dongle. We'll find out over the weekend. We're gonna have to trip to Best Buy here, and we're gonna get this sorted out.
There you go. Everyone's saying, thanks for going long. Yeah, hey, it's Friday, baby. It's Friday. Yeah. So there you go.
I went as long as I could.
All right. We appreciate you all. Thank you very much. He is Andrew Mason. You follow him on Twitter at Mace Denver. I'm at Cecil Lammey, saying be safe, be kind, know that you are appreciated. Stay tuned. And as always, please.
Timing's off.
I'm not used to this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Rewind. Stay tuned. And as always, stay frosty.